Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. For those familiar new to the podcast, I'm Sarah, and thanks for joining me today. In this episode, I'm joined by Kevin Espiritu, the founder of Epic Gardening, an education company that teaches people to grow their own food and plants. What started as a simple side project has grown into a multi-channel business that reaches millions of people in over 100 countries around the world. Kevin discusses the inspiration behind Epic Gardening and goes over the techniques and strategies he used to scale the site into authority in its niche. We also dig into how Kevin secured $17.5 million in growth capital for the business and the reasons why he believes websites are such a good investment vehicle. Kevin has a fascinating story, but I don't want to give away too much just yet, so let's dig into the interview and see what he has to share. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast. I'm really excited to be joined by today's guest. We have Kevin Espiritu joining us. So Kevin, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Hey, thank you so much, Sarah. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. You know, some people might know you if they are avid gardeners, but for those who don't know you, tell us where you are in the world right now.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in San Diego, California, which is where I still am. So I'm down here in Southern California.
Lucky. I love San Diego. It's been one of my favorite places I've ever visited, hoping to go back soon. Fingers crossed. So I love that you're living the dream. Well, so in the meantime, you know, probably didn't just happen to end up in San Diego doing what you're doing overnight. So walk me through how your entrepreneurial journey started and where you are with it today.
Yeah, sure. So, I'll start with today and rewind a bit we might rewind a lot. I guess it's hard to know when someone's entrepreneurial journey starts. But, today Epic Gardening is, I believe, the world's largest sort of gardening media platform. So we're on YouTube, podcasts. We've got 2 published books, multiple YouTube channels, actually, Instagram, TikTok. I think we're the biggest gardening channel on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram now. And of course, we have blogs and podcasts and stuff. So there's that piece to it. There's also the commerce element to it where we sell high quality garden products directly to that audience. And we're growing pretty fast there. But of course, like you said, it definitely didn't start out that way. And I sort of fumbled my way through, I don't even know how many different projects before I got to this point. So, if you go all the way back, I think we could say that I was one of those kids that was, on Napster, give me 10 songs, I'll burn it onto a CD and I'll sell it to you for $10 type of guy. I was buying candy at Costco, dividing it and selling it type of guy. So, I think a lot of stories that I hear from entrepreneurs, especially in the online space, you can see like little hints of where they came from with their early behaviors as a kid. I don't think everyone's that way. There's definitely exceptions to that rule, but it seems pretty common. So that was something I was doing growing up. And then as I turned 18, I got really obsessed with poker. I was playing poker with a bunch of friends of mine in high school. And there was this guy, Chris Moneymaker was his name, who won the World Series of Poker, I believe, in 2004. And he was the first regular guy to win. And he qualified from the internet, which was, it wasn't new at that time, but certainly that behavior was new. And so all of us kids, 17, 18, were like, well, we could be like Chris Moneymaker. Let's start playing poker. So we started playing poker. And I got decent in just playing with friends in real life. And then when I turned 18 and went away to college, I put $100 on, I don't even know the site at this point in time, one of the older sites, and studied. I was playing limit poker. Then I moved to no limit poker. I moved to playing heads up, which is 1 versus 1, and started climbing up the ranks of buy-ins. So like $100 buy-in, $200 buy-in. Then I'd play 15, 16 tables at a time. And I wasn't extremely good, but I was definitely above average. And, in that time, above average means you were basically printing money. And so through college, I was playing online poker, which I wouldn't necessarily call that entrepreneurial. It was definitely like an alternative path. But when I got out of college, I was investing in other poker players, which might be my first true sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, I suppose. And then after that, just tons and tons of different little stops and starts type of businesses until, of course, we got to Epic.
Wow. I love that. It's so funny because I think I've interviewed maybe one or two other people that started in the poker space as well. And like you said, it seems to be like there's this symbiotic relationship between, people who are starting to be entrepreneurial really young, or they're doing something out of the norm like poker. And then whatever ends up being out of the norm, it's like they gravitate towards the online space. It seems to be like where they find their true home.
Yeah, it's very true. I think poker, to me, is one of the better predictors of online entrepreneurship success because it's basically a slimmed down version of real life, and you're making real life decisions with real life stakes because you're quite literally putting money on your bets. It's sort of like a forcing function of really quickly learning how to evaluate information. And it's not a perfect game. So it's not like checkers. I know where your pieces are. You know where my pieces are. I know something about what's on the table. I don't know everything. I know about you. I know how you act and how you tend to play, but you could be fooling me. And so it's a game of imperfect information that you're forced to put real world stakes on, which is sort of like the world of business. And so it seems like a lot of poker players tend to be decent at business.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the ability to kind of pivot, which you have to, the ability to separate your wins and losses and keep going, which is obviously so important, especially in the online space. I think one thing I find in particular kind of fascinating, granted, this is like a total outsider perspective, and you're going to probably tell me otherwise here, is I look at Epic Gardening, and I'm assuming that started off as kind of like an affiliate site project, which is obviously just kind of blossomed into its own mega brand. I'm curious about kind of the start of that, and what kind of gap did you identify in the market early on that made you go, okay, I really want to start a gardening brand, a gardening site?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Early on, like I had said earlier, it was like stops and starts type of businesses, other little affiliate websites, doing SEO for local businesses. So I played around in the online space, hadn't really found my home, so to speak, had made like little bits and I could support myself, pay my bills. And when I started Epic, you're actually totally right. It really was just a hydroponics blog actually at the time. So a very limited subset of gardening. I would review gear. I would write about how to do a certain technique, like a deep water culture system or an ebb and flow system. And it was just informational. And so the gap I had noticed back then is I was getting into gardening and hydroponics specifically, but the information I was getting was there was a book called the Cannabis Grow Bible. I wasn't even growing cannabis, but it was like the best resource on hydroponics. And I was like, well, it's weird that that's what I have to read to get basic information on this hobby. And I was also reading through like university PDFs, which of course, if you're a search person, you're like, that's like the worst way to present information online possible. Combing through and pulling information out and just putting it onto a WordPress blog was the gap back then. And I think as we scaled up, obviously we've gotten into all sorts of different types of media, but really it's translating the language of inside baseball, right? Like all the horticulture or botany terms down back into layperson language for all these beginners who want to learn how to grow plants. I mean, you don't start out knowing all this terminology. So I couldn't understand why people were speaking that way to beginners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that you set out to do that, like a total outsider to something like hydroponics or homesteading. But I know Greg, our director of marketing, it's like really weirdly into that on the side. Like I had no idea until one day I was like, yeah, hydroponics, have you heard of it? It's really cool. And he's like, wait a minute, let me show you. I wanted to grow a website on that or homesteading. And all of a sudden we were bonding over this like thing that we, both didn't know that each other were into. And it's a cool little corner. And I love that it's just become so popular. At least gardening has become so popular. Because that's something I wanted to ask you about was like, where's the gap from there's a niche subset of people doing this to all of a sudden you have this website that's attracted over 10 million readers last year. I mean, where did that explosion come from? Was this maybe a byproduct of, say, the pandemic and people had time on their hands, so they wanted to, pick up gardening, or, maybe even this kind of cultural phenomenon of everyone becoming quote unquote plant parents, plant mom, stuff like that. Like, I'm just so curious if you saw a relationship, something there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be foolish to say that that wasn't part of it for sure, right? So by 2020, we had all the platforms, right? I was on TikTok, I was on Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, et cetera. Every single one of those saw a massive rise. So certainly the pandemic was part of it. I think you're right. There was a wave of this houseplant parent type of movement in the last 4 or 5 years that we definitely wrote a little bit of by creating houseplant content. But really, to get a site to that scale, this is a site that I started, I think I probably registered the domain in 2013, really didn't go full time on it, quit a job, went full time in 2016. And so really started trying to grow it actively, I would say around then. So a lot of it is compounding growth over time. a lot of it, of course, are those events that we mentioned. But really, where I would hone in on for like a site builder that's listening to the podcast is really tiny decisions that compound growth in a site. So, the decision to never do any black or gray hat stuff, for example, it just guarantees that I'm not getting taken out by anything, right? I might be sub-optimized for, let's say, a new algorithm update, and that's fine. We can do some on-site technical SEO changes to the site, but I'm never worried that I'm going to get taken out. So what does that mean? That means that my compounding of my site authority and site strength and readership will never be interrupted, like a lot of people have experienced. I think probably a lot of people listening maybe got hit by some sort of algo and boom, there goes a year of their life, right?
Right.
Or a year of their site's life. So that's one thing. I mean, rock solid content, just actually truly helpful content where if you read it, you get the answer that you were searching for. Obviously pretty straightforward. But what I've noticed in the online world is that a lot of people seem to get into this sort of world of businesses to make money for themselves. And they don't realize that they're actually creating websites and properties that ideally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people use that are actually other human beings that are actually looking for solutions to problems. And the best way to get what you want, which for a lot of these people is just get rich, get money, make 10K a month, whatever, is actually just to give them what they want and not try to hack some weird system in the online marketing world. And so to me, that was an unlock that I just never went down that road, which I think helped us a lot. There's definitely some very practical things that we did, like purchasing a houseplant website and improving all those articles through and redirecting them over to Epic. That site, when we bought it for $1,000, I tracked the guy down on Twitter. He was like an Indian venture capitalist guy in India, and I bought the site for $1,000. Wow. And it was getting 30,000 uniques a month. And so I went to a coffee shop every day, rewrote 2 articles a day as best I could, and redirected those over to Epic, which had no houseplant articles at the time. And that in a month was hitting 100,000 hits a month. And of course, on just raw display ad revenue, RPM basis, your payback period on that investment is like less than 60 days. And so that was a very obvious play, a little M&A, like a very small M&A type of thing that added forever 100,000+ hits a month to the website, So it's the amalgamation of like all those little things from the macro to the micro, I think, that helped us.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring all that up. I mean, I want to say, certainly while pandemic and certain cultural trends were benefiting you, you obviously were putting in the work for years. You were there at the right time with all of your channels established to benefit from some of these movements. So it's like, what is it? Build it and they'll come. Well, you were already building it. You were doing all the right things for a long time, which is, it's super impressive what you've done. Because it's one thing, like you said, to, build that little affiliate site with your hat on of I'm trying to make a certain amount of money a month versus growing a real trusted brand that people are excited to pull open and be like, oh my God, I learned something from that. Like even just pulling open your site, I was like, one of these things, I love being a digital nomad, but I do miss, being in one place and having things like plants. I had a nice little plant collection before I started traveling, and I pulled open your site and there was like one plant on there. I was like, oh my God, I had one of those. I missed that guy. I think my friend killed it when I left, when I was like, watch my babies. She just killed them immediately. So yeah, I love that you bring that up because we've been talking about that a lot in the podcast, the difference in creating value, creating content for humans versus I have an affiliate site. I'm trying to make as much money as possible and game the system and game the humans that read my thing. So to see you on the other end of that, so, I mean, from my seat looking so wildly successful and doing what you're doing, I think it just speaks for itself.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've talked, with Gail and Mark at Authority Hacker. I've been friends with them for quite a long time. We actually met each other on like a forum in 2010, probably. And so, I've been talking to them for a long time and other people in this space. And I think I might have a somewhat extremist viewpoint of, remember there's that whole debate of like, should you put your face on your site or not? I remember when that was like a huge debate and I was like, well, I see 99% of these affiliate marketer type people saying, no, like my privacy is everything. I'm like, okay, well, I have an instant competitive advantage by putting my face on my blog, Ben, and I'm not ashamed of what I'm promoting. It's gardening. I like to garden. And to me, it's just, there's a total mindset difference between someone building a business, like an actual full-fledged business, and someone building, I guess what I would call like a self-serving internet marketing arbitrage that does run out over time. I mean, personally I don't see why you would ever do the latter. It's actually pretty much the same amount of work. One's way more fulfilling and satisfying. It's easier to be proud of the thing that you've built. And also the upside potential is much higher if you only cared about money anyways.
Right. That's super interesting. I see that, pulling up your site, you're present with the brand, but like to me, it automatically makes sense as I'm seeing you on the YouTube. Like you're very much a part of building this, but I get the sense that comes from a place of caring about actually liking gardening, having this history with gardening. Yeah, I find that all compelling. It's so much easier to buy into somebody who came from having to learn gardening themselves and want to buy from you versus like the faceless site that's like, here's the tool that you should use. And yeah, obvious disconnect there, but I find that like a interesting case scenario for doing what you did.
Yeah, I guess I get it if you're into a niche that maybe a personal brand doesn't make a lot of sense, but a brand in general should make a lot of sense. And I remember doing what I just said not to do in my earlier projects and wondering why no one cared, right? It just seems like such an obvious thing to do, especially because, right now in the macro sense, the hottest thing right now is quote unquote creator economy. But basically what's happening is everyone is a media company. The distribution channels are free. And the only thing separating you from being large or being small is quality of your content and your relatability to your audience. And if you have attention right now, you have the most rare currency on earth. And so I don't see why people wouldn't be trying to accumulate that.
That is fantastic advice. Well, I guess in that note, let's talk about attention because, Epic Gardening has over 3 million social media followers, casual, no big deal. How do you go about creating engaging social media content that's symbiotic with the content you're building on your website and across all these different channels?
It's a question that's like ever evolving for me because I really am obsessed with content, specifically video content, but content in general. We have a podcast, we have written books, we have written articles, of course. And in the early days, I did it very systematically, very tactically. So, when I launched the YouTube channel, I looked at my top 10 to 20 blog posts via Google Analytics and said, okay, well, obviously I should just make YouTube videos on those topics and embed the YouTube video into the article. Very tactical, very sort of like marketer obvious, right? And it worked. Early hydroponics articles, we would put videos up and then voila, you've got instant traffic to a YouTube channel. That would be hard to grow otherwise because how are you going to get traffic? You're just going to have to wait, hopefully, for YouTube's algorithm to pick it up. But why would they pick up a new channel? There's no reason for them to because new channels are created every day. So I started feeding them views from traffic channels that I already had, right? So same with the podcast. You just top 50 articles. It's a daily podcast. Top 50 podcasts, first 50 that I put out, and then put those podcasts on the blog page. So that's like more of a tactical, practical, like starting a channel. Then when you get into creating, the mistake I made for too long, and I don't think I make it anymore, probably every now and then, but really every platform is its own entity and it has its own sort of meta language and culture around it that you have to attack. So for example, what's hot right now is Instagram Reels and TikTok. Well, it's both 9:16 short form video, right? So can't you just repost what you make on Instagram for TikTok? And the answer, of course, is yes, you can do whatever you want. However, even if I have the same exact topic, let's say like, growing bush beans or something in a container. In a perfect world, if I had unlimited time and resources, I would actually make the same video twice, once for TikTok and once for Instagram. I might phrase it differently. I might cut it differently. I might speak a little differently. I might use some sort of meme of the week that's trending on TikTok in that content. And it's these tiny little like 1% improvements in a video like that will catapult growth on social, at least in my opinion. Everything to me is a compounded game. So like if I can make a video that's fractionally better than call it the competition, although I don't really view it that way, but the universe of videos that are out there at any one time, if I can make my lighting, humor, the videography, the topic selection, the hook, all of that stuff fractionally better every single time, I will accrue more people. And they will connect with the content better because it's literally better content according to how people respond to it with the algorithm. And also algorithmically, it's better content. I don't know if that really makes any sense to people, but that is one way I think about building a social platform. And to get back down to the human level, it's like, look, like just make stuff that you would find interesting given you're interested in your niche. Is it helpful, entertaining, valuable, shocking, surprising, gardening content in our case? If it is, it's probably going to do well.
Yeah, a couple things come to my mind as you talk about that. One, and maybe this is me being a bit negative, is I hear this and you're talking about the micro changes that you have to make between all the different content. Like you said, you could replicate between Instagram and TikTok, but probably not the best way to go. If you make these micro changes, it's going to be a lot better. And I feel like there's probably going to be some entrepreneurs out there a little deflated going, crap, like I've been just trying to clean and replicate because creating content is hard. Repurposing content is hard. It's time consuming. I thought I could just kind of copy everything over and be okay. And you're saying, well, the changes, if you really want to see great outcomes, you're going to have to work at it. It brings to my mind though, because it's like, okay, you're creating all this different content. You're kind of meeting the platform where it is. You're meeting the micro communities and the nuances of how you speak on that platform. Of course, on this quest to build community. And it's like, while kind of you're basically building unique communities on each of those platforms while feeding what would hopefully be a cohesive community around the brand. I guess what I'm asking is like, how do you do that? How do you bridge that line between like, I've got my TikTokers who need this, but my Twitter followers need this, but I really want them all to still feel like they're on the same page around epic gardening. Is that a problem or no? I don't know if I'm making that
No,
up.
I think it is a problem. So here's the downside, right? Like every strength has a weakness. So if I hyper optimize each platform to be very specific content wise around gardening on that platform, you're right. You may develop sort of cracks in the armor of the entire brand of what people feel about Epic as a brand, right? So on YouTube, I do longer format videos that are pretty informational, hopefully a little entertaining. And then on TikTok, I'm way more like ridiculous and oh, look at this plant, calling myself the plant daddy, potato daddy, all these stupid things,
Awesome.
I think it's hilarious personally. So I just do what I think is funny. But, the audience definitely responds to it differently there. And, one thing I think that's important if you're trying to go with this multi-platform strategy is like, okay, look, if I'm following XYZ brand on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, right? Why would I follow them on all three if I'm seeing the same thing on all three? What's the point? There's actually no point in following them on all three. Not to say that everyone should follow every brand on every platform, or that's even how it works. It isn't actually how it works. Like on YouTube, it's 55% men. On TikTok, it's 75% women. And it actually skews younger on TikTok, but the platform skews younger. I think you're right. I think there's certain things that are a struggle to get the point across of what is Epic trying to do. I mean, our mission is teach the world to grow. And so as long as we're doing that on those platforms, I think we're probably fulfilling the mission okay. But something we are thinking about is how do we make sure that the vibe of Epic Gardening, what we stand for, what we mean, and sort of our flavor of approach to gardening, how do we make sure that that sort of comes through subtly on everything we do? And it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that because it's like, again, sitting in my seat, I see the numbers, I'm hearing the story. You look like this wild success. You've got this wonderful mission behind you. I'm like, it looks so rosy, but we know things aren't always rosy, right? So what were some of the biggest challenges or setbacks you faced while scaling this brand?
I would say, the biggest setbacks were all of my own making. So it was basically just not acting quickly enough on process and people. Like I was very reticent to hire in general, let alone to like aggressively hire. And so, my first hire in 2017 was a writer. And that was because I was spending 20 to 30 hours, maybe 40, writing articles to get the blog sort of off to a good start. This is back when really I only had the blog, maybe a YouTube channel. And, if I was smarter, I would have said, look, I've put down 400 well-researched gardening articles already. It might be time for me to pivot where my time's more valuable doing something else. And so you've probably talked about this with a bunch of people on the podcast before, but it's, knowing where your time is most valuable as the founder is dramatically the most important thing, because if you have the resources, what you should be doing is either automating, delegating, or hiring or deleting stuff that's not as valuable for your leveraged time, right? So, when I did hire a writer, all of a sudden 20, 30 hours a week are back on my plate. Now I figure out what's the highest leverage thing I can do to scale it. And at that time, it was trying to build some links and trying to do some guest posts and write articles on other people's sites, collaborate with other people so that some of their audience would connect with us. As soon as I could do that and figure that out, it was a mixture of, maybe having an assistant helping that process while then I focused on video. And I should have hired an editor sooner, probably, if I was doing it again, right away, because I'm never going to be as good at editing as an editor would be full time. So I spent a ton of time editing videos that if I was smarter, I would have just hired an editor straight out of the gate. The videos would have been edited better, which means they would have performed better. And I would have had time to make more videos because I'm only filming them, right? And so it's this ever evolving process of zooming back in and out of the business, knowing where you actually should and shouldn't be spending time, and then getting the people and process in place the second you know what isn't worth your time to do anymore. Not that it's not worthwhile to do, it's just you shouldn't be doing it anymore. That's probably the biggest challenge. It's mostly just seeing those things. We didn't have any sort of catastrophic thing happen that we had to then solve at Epic. It was mostly just that I think I could have scaled it much faster if I was just smarter.
Yep. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You said it before. It's like you've probably had people come into the podcast and face the same thing. And you're right. But that's because it's that universal entrepreneurial struggle. I'm impressed with the fact that you hit 400 articles before you decided to outsource. I mean, that's a lot of work.
It was a lot of writing.
Yeah, a lot of writing. You probably had like hand cramps from just like how much typing you had to do. So fair play to you there. And also, coming from a video background myself, like editing is no small feat. So the fact that you even were like, I'm going to do that myself for a while, I'm like, wow.
It was cutting and dragging clips, and that's it. There's nothing fancy at all. I did not edit it in a professional way.
Even then, it is time consuming. And if anything, there's this scarier part of seeing yourself, having to play yourself back that many times. That'll take you to some places mentally and emotionally like, I've got a little like self-judgment right now.
Yeah, it's actually really funny. So it does show up, right? I mean, but for me, I've been doing it so long now, quite literally, my voice to me in my own head when I'm talking. And when I listen to it, maybe back on this interview, if I listen to this or in a YouTube video, I can't tell the difference anymore. In the way, and I've seen myself on video so much that I'm not bothered by how I look. I mean, I'm a little out of shape. I'm bothered by that, but I'm not bothered by like, oh, I just look weird, which is the thing that people end up having when they film video. Part of that is just like repetition. And then part of it is earlier on, but even before Epic, I had done Toastmasters, like a public speech club. And then I also did like 18 months of improv comedy, which to me is like almost the hack of all hacks, because if you can go up on stage in front of people you don't know and like have your stage partner turn you into like a talking piece of cheese or whatever, just something totally stupid, then like certainly me talking on camera about gardening, why would I be afraid of doing that? I already was a talking piece of cheese. It's not a big deal. It's to talk about something I actually know, so that desensitized me a bit.
I think your next level is how do you talk about gardening while being a talking piece of cheese? Like, just kind
maybe
of like
for Halloween. Yeah, for Halloween we'll do something.
Bring it together. No, I love that. It's great. I've heard really good things about facing the epic fear of doing improv and what that can kind of lead to. A lot of new pathways for people when they do improv. So that's cool. So maybe I'll add that to my bucket list. So you were talking about having time on your hands. You kind of stepped back. You brought people in. All of a sudden, I guess speaking of new pathways, they were starting to emerge for you. So I wanted to talk to you about the ecom branch of your business, because I understand you've kind of had this engine running and all of a sudden you added ecom into the mix. So you're selling gardening products via your website. How'd you identify the right time to make this move, and how has that unfolded for you?
Yeah. So second question first, I mean, ecom is now drastically the majority of our revenue, 90% or more. Even as all the other classic affiliate, ad revenue, YouTube revenue, brand revenue also is scaling. Ecom is just scaling that much faster. So certainly it's become the dominant strategy for us and the one that we're going to be using going forward in a huge way. We actually have some really big plans there. But speaking as to how I decided to make the move, I mean, look, like if you're a website, YouTube, whatever owner, creator, let's call it, you're making money basically through one of maybe four ways. So you're making affiliate revenue, you're making ad revenue, whether it be on your site or on YouTube. You're making brand revenue by working with brands. Really, if you think about it, all of those are third parties. So, your ad revenue is linearly scaled by your traffic, whether it be on YouTube or your blog, right? So if something happens there, your revenue as a company scales appropriately, right? With affiliates, let's take the biggest affiliate out there, Amazon. We were huge on Amazon. It was 2020, I believe, when Amazon cut their affiliate commissions because of the pandemic. So they went in home and garden, they went from 8 to 4%. We were on track to make 70 grand just on Amazon in March that month, which is the month they cut it. April, it was the following month. And so, I went from making 70 grand a month to 35 grand a month, which is not small, but it's 50% drop. And so in 2019, I took a look at the business and I was like, look, like if Amazon does something, I have no control. It could go to zero. If my traffic wanes, my ads wane respective to that. And if brands do or don't decide to give us contracts, then we do or don't make money. I don't really have control. And so I was like, okay, well, how do you get control? And you have to offer a product or a service to do so. And so I said, okay, well, I'll start doing gardening products, because if you really think about what you build when you have a platform, is you're actually building an attention engine, and attention flows through to demand. And so what you can do is you can actually just put products, services, ideas in front of your community, and the ones that they respond to the most are probably the ones you should offer them. And so, for us, it was this raised bed out of Australia called a Birdie's raised bed. It's sort of this corrugated metal bed, and everyone wanted to know where we got those over and over and over again. And so I just messaged them on a monthly basis saying, hey, do you have a distributor? Can I sell these in America? I would love to bring them over. I think they're really popular. They said, no. And then in the beginning of 2019, they said yes, because their other distributor kind of dropped out. And so that was the play. I was like, look, I know literally nothing about e-commerce. My plan was so dumb at the start. I bought a 20-foot shipping container. So it was like maybe 35, 40 grand of product, which is far and away the largest expense I'd had in the business in one fell swoop at that time. And I was like, okay, well, I'll roll up a Shopify store, very simple store, and I will pre-sell them while they get to America so I can get some revenue back and hopefully pay that bill, right? And so it sold out in like a week. So I had probably 3x. I maybe had like 120 grand worth of revenue from that, which then I used to pay off the container and buy another container. Sold that out, did the same thing. And of course, you're sort of scaling your capital there. But I had no real plan for how to actually fulfill any of that, because all I had was the digital storefront. So it was so dumb. I was literally about to sign a contract with a self-storage facility to take a 20-foot shipping container and unload it by hand into a storage facility. It was like the dumbest idea ever, until I met a couple friends of mine, and they're like, dude, that's really dumb.
Thank God for friends, huh?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know why I didn't just ask them in the first place. I was that dumb. But yeah, so I signed a relationship with a 3PL. And of course, I routed the orders to them. They fulfilled it, and we were off to the races. Now, of course, we have 20 plus vendors on the store. We have our own warehouse that we operate, as well as 3PL partners. We're hopefully getting into Canada and the UK in about a couple months. We're scaling up pretty rapidly now, but the decision point, to get back to the original question, is the fact that I had no true control over my destiny as a creator, because my revenue was coming from things that I cannot control. And so that's why I got into e-com.
I mean, I do empathize with you in a way, because back to what you said about the intention engine, if I said it correctly, had a good thing going, but you kind of don't know how that's going to play out when it comes to somebody actually making a purchase and, putting an order in, I think, until you do it. And so I think there's a lot of people out there in your position, have the good attention engine, you've got your set ways of making money online, like you outlined. Okay, I'm going to branch into this new thing. You kind of can't anticipate the wild success of it until you're in it. And then you're like, oh my God, I have to follow through on this. Like that. Yeah. Scary, but like good, scary, but oh my God, help.
I would say a little scary just at the raw dollar amount, right? Like at the time, 30, 40 grand, I was like, okay, well, that's pretty crazy, but really not at the same time, because what's my worst case scenario there? I sell the beds at cost and lose a couple grand on freight. Like, here's the thing. Like, I knew I was going to sell the beds, because far and away, anytime I posted anything about my garden, the question, like 5% of the comments were like, where'd you get those beds? How can I get those beds? I'm like, yeah, there's no way they're not selling. Maybe they wouldn't sell at the economic price point I had set. Turns out they did. But my risk was like, look, like I might make only my money back, right? And have learned something. So it was very, very calculated. But yeah, there's also the emotional, like I sent the 30K wire and that feels bad,
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you laid it out there. It's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I've assessed it. What is my greatest risk here? I also like what you just said. It's like you're looking at your comments and you're seeing there's demand. There's people wondering, how can I buy that too? And I think there's a lot of people in, if they're lucky enough to have a well-run affiliate brand, if you will, like figure out where that demand is, look for it, like look at what your audience is asking for, and then learn how to meet that need. Because otherwise you are at the will of the internet gods like Amazon and Google. And
totally,
we know how that goes. You know how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of site owners, because, I'm in a couple groups and I see people and they're at a certain amount of revenue per month or per year. And I'm like, look, like that's fantastic. It's actually very difficult to get even $1 online. And so to do it, very impressive. But your net income is effectively what you'd be making with any job, any reasonable, collar job, even blue collar job. Like, unless that was your goal to just do life on your own time and I mean, you grind pretty hard to build these websites. It's not like you're working 40 hours most of the time. And I'm like, man, like you really should be protecting yourself from a downturn or trying to scale it a little bit, because what'd you put in all this work for if you're not going to try to hit a home run? That's my perspective, at least.
No, I love that. I mean, in my mind, I guess this is maybe the next step of your home run, because I wanted to get into this. I understand that you just raised a 17.5 million in growth capital for Epic Gardening. So I was wondering what inspired your decision to raise capital for the business.
Yeah, so really nothing inspired it, to be honest with you. I think once you get a company past a certain scale, especially these online companies, people just come knocking because they notice you. All these VC and PE style companies they got research teams. They're looking for deals all the time. And, most of the time it's just delete in your email. This particular investor, the Churning Group, had reached out and, something struck me a little differently. I looked at their portfolio. They're in some incredible companies, some of which I'm a customer of, like Aura Ring and Meat Eater, Food 52, some of these incredible companies I've seen over the years. And I was like, okay, well, this feels a little bit different. And so I had a conversation, and it took a long time to get a deal done, because really I'm sort of like self-taught almost everything. And so I didn't know much about the world of fundraising. So I had to educate myself on how that worked and all that, why you might do it. But here was the impetus. The impetus was this, like, we are leading the space in the attention economy of gardening. I've proven out that I can build products into the company. And honestly, we did in 2021, which we closed our deal like right at the end of the year. So let's call that my year, where I sort of was running it still, without the funding. We did like 7.4 million in revenue on a team of basically 3 people plus some contractors, which,
Wow.
at least according to what I've heard, because I don't really have any benchmark, that's actually pretty crazy. I was well past my point of expertise as far as how to run a scaled company, probably many millions before that. I don't think I'd gotten a company past $1 million. So to get to 7.4, I was like, look, like I'm pretty burnt out because I probably should have hired before, like I was telling you earlier. I am a little past the point. Like if I'm continuing down this path of e-com and et cetera, there's actually skill sets like I simply don't have and can't develop fast enough. And I'm going to need to hire people. And I'm going to need capital to hire people, given I want to hire rapidly and actually really attack the market. And so, the Turner Group came through and we had a long conversation. It took like 6 months to get the deal done. And, went from basically bootstrap to raising a Series A right out of the gate, to staff up and, onboard new vendors, bring new team members on, professionalize all of our operations. And it was basically like, look, money's coming into gardening no matter what. If I don't do a deal, I'm going to have the same problems I have now, and someone else is going to be coming at us. And we're the best people in the space as far as content goes, in my opinion. So why would I not partner up with an investor that's done this multiple times over in different verticals, hunting, fishing, health, et cetera. And, also an opportunity to take a little bit of risk off the table after building the thing for 5 years. So it was just sort of this beautiful moment where it all came together and strategically it just made sense.
Wow. You said that came together, the deal, in about 6 months?
Yeah, I think we started talking maybe like March of 2021, and we closed the deal a couple of days before Christmas in December. So it took a while.
Okay. Well, a nice little present then for the holidays. Not too bad.
Yeah.
So what's the plan? I mean, now that you've got the capital in place, what does scaling the business further look like?
We're up to 17 team members now from 3 in December. So we've hired pretty aggressively. We locked down some office space. A lot of it is infrastructure and ops. So like getting the people in place, getting customer service professionalized. It's like every department of the company, who's running it? What are they doing? What tech stack are we using? Let's build for the future, a future in which we hope we're making, $50+ million in top line revenue a year in the gardening space. So that sort of, that necessitates a different type of approach to your tech stack and your communications as a company and all that. It's bringing on new vendors, having the money to spend on inventory to warehouse and fulfill it. And then it's also looking at different areas of the gardening landscape that it's hard to just build it. You kind of have to buy it. So, for example, there's a friend of mine who runs a seed company in San Diego. I've been friends with her for a long time, almost since the launch of her company. She sells seeds. She sells organic seeds. They're absolutely fantastic. And I've promoted them for a long time on my channels just because she's a friend. If I'm promoting how to grow plants and how to start seeds and how to grow all sorts of different types of plants, what's preventing me from selling seeds directly to our customers? Nothing. we're already selling all the hard goods, the raised beds, containers, irrigation kits and stuff. And we already educate on how to grow a lot of this stuff. So why not sell seeds direct? And why not improve the seed offerings that we offer to the home garden market? As a grower, I see a lot of opportunity there. It's the same with, fruit trees or shrubs. Why would we not? Since I have videos on a ton of fruit trees and shrubs already and articles and podcasts, why am I sending them to, a competitor site that it's good, but can I make a better offering for live goods shipped directly to the customer? For sure. Can I have better education around it? For sure. As a brand, as a company, why would I direct people out of our ecosystem when we can offer them something better directly to them? So it's maybe there's a nursery that we end up picking up and start shipping direct to consumer. So we're kind of looking at things like that. Like, how do we offer the best of the best across all the categories directly to the millions of people that already come to us?
Yeah, it's so interesting listening to your approach because, it sounds like you've had a good M&A hat on your head for a while, back from when you first acquired that one site and you did all the redirects. And now you're kind of looking at more like physical products, bringing more into the fold. How do you become the best of the best? It's something that we obviously talk about a lot on the podcast, obviously relates to what we're doing at Empire Flippers. How does any entrepreneur approach their business with a smart M&A mindset? It doesn't mean you have to go pick out a really expensive other business. Maybe you can and roll it up into your own, or you're really looking for those like prime opportunities that build you up. I love that you've done that because I think, one thing that maybe might resonate with you is I feel like you have probably a good perspective of how websites in general can make a good investment vehicle. And maybe that relates to that M&A capability
For sure.
like you're just talking about. But I'm curious to get your take. Like, why would you go to bat and tell people, hey, websites, investments, great, go for it?
Yeah. In the context of Epic, something we've been thinking about, I just told you how we might be acquiring, product companies and bringing them into the fold that are great brand fits for us, probably partners we've had for years. That makes a lot of sense, but that's bottom of the funnel product conversion, right? There's also the play of acquiring more top of the funnel organic traffic, right? So if there's a brand that we really love, Old Farmer's Almanac, not that that's the target or anything like that, but just it's a great brand in the gardening space. Imagine a world where they're ready to pass that business on and we can steward it into the next generation while integrating our products and services through that audience over time. That's an instant top of funnel boost of the likes of which would take years to build. And so that in Epic was something we are kind of looking at. We'll see. Maybe we'll come to Empire Flippers for that. You never know. But as a solo operator, like as a site owner or someone who's running like a portfolio of websites or something, you look at real estate, look at the market, look at VC, look at angel investments. There is actually no vehicle still, at least that I've identified, unless you're straight up doing some stuff that has a better return profile than investing in websites. And so, yeah, in a world where I had more time, I would love to have like a little team of operators that are improving sites the way I know how to improve them across a couple of different verticals. I'd love to have that. I just don't have the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. With everything you've just laid out and what you've been able to do with Epic, it's like, why not be able to replicate that? But you clearly got such a good engine going. No need to kind of branch out and go too crazy just yet.
Yeah.
It does make me think, if you were to start this all over, was there anything you would do differently the second time around?
I think a lot of it's what we've already talked about. It's like, moving faster, hiring more rapidly, processing the company a bit better. I think thinking about vision earlier would have been smart. I was very myopically focused. You can talk to some friends in the online world. They were like, yeah, all Kevin was talking about was making $5,000 a month. So I very much was like the people that I say not to be now, right? And so over focusing on the revenue I could take out of the company and live my life with or invest elsewhere was a mistake early, given where I know it could have been as I sit here today. As I sit here today with it's who knows what we'll hit in revenue this year, but it's going to be 8 figures, right? Why would I have, skimped on reinvesting into the business in those early years? Because those early years, the compounding, of course, if you're compounding quicker, that 8 figures this year could have been 25 million. Right? Could have impacted the deal that I ended up making. You never know. And so I think a huge mistake that a lot of earlier operators make, and I was talking to my cousin about this, he has a site in the fishing space. I was like, look, take only what you need to literally live off of in the beginning, if you're trying to scale. and shovel the rest back into the company, into the most intelligent people, processes, tech, whatever it is that helps you compound your growth the quickest possible, because that's pretty much what no one does, in my opinion, in this space. And if you look at some of the biggest creators out there, like someone like Mr. Beast, what he's done just on YouTube, now elsewhere, but is basically just shovel 99.9% of profit back through the business. And that's why he compounds faster than anyone else in the world, really. And so as long as you're making correct decisions with the money that you're putting back into the business, you will grow extremely quickly. So that's probably the biggest mistake I made.
In a way, it's like I maybe like sympathize with past you or, all the entrepreneurs who might be in a similar position, because it's like, it's almost hard to think and imagine where you are today with where you were back then, going like, yeah, I'm sitting now with 8 figures in growth capital. I've got this successful YouTube, about, millions of followers, all of these things, sometimes so hard to, I don't even know if you can call it see it, the forest through the trees, if it's just like see the epicness, I guess no pun intended, of what you could have been. But look, I mean, everything that you just said, you laid out, it's obvious as to why you have to kind of keep your head down, keep refocusing, because basically you just don't know. You just don't know what you can be. You just don't know what you can be past that 5K a month, the initial.
Yeah, no, totally. I think if I could have told myself back then something to do differently, I'd say like literally just don't put a cap on what it could be and act accordingly. Instead of being like, oh, like I'd be happy if I got to 5, 10, 20K a month, whatever it is, be happy regardless and keep working, and just don't put a cap on what it could be, because you actually don't know. And if you do put a cap on it, what it does is it subconsciously gates your actions that you take in the business to hit a certain goal, instead of just acting in the best interest of the business, which should grow you quicker.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I guess in light of all that, I have a personal question for you. Do you feel like you've made it? Quote unquote, you've made it?
I think in like monetary terms, anyone would say that I've made it. What I realized, I guess, 2020 with product revenue kind of ramping into the pandemic, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I guess the goals I had when I was younger, I'm there now from an objective point of view. But for me, it's like one day. And I was like, okay, well, what now? Really, there is no, you can go out and celebrate or whatever, but there's only so many things you can buy. I don't buy anything pretty much. Like I barely spend any money. And so I was like, why did I try to hit this monetary goal if I don't even spend money? Like, what was the point? I think the point is to achieve freedom. And so I do have that now, but really, if I look back, I had it the whole time. And so I think this whole idea of making it is like weirdly philosophical. So yeah, like obviously you have enough money to live off of your investments or whatever. That could be one way of making it. But there is this like philosophical point that you could make of like, you've never made it or you're always making it. You're just there. You're just living. So I don't know. I guess so. And I guess not at the same time.
No, I love that. I love that answer. I think almost making it is to arriving to the point of being like, oh, I had a lot of what I wanted or needed the whole time. Or it's, I don't need a lot of things that, or want the things that I thought I did. Actually, just what I have in the moment is pretty great,
I would say like all it really does is problems are less of problems. Problems that money solves are less of problems, or they aren't problems, but every problem that money does not solve, as big a problem or bigger, right? Because it doesn't matter how much money can't solve it, it's still a problem. And so, like getting in shape or like, mental health, like all these sort of things, generally money does not help you there. And so it doesn't matter if you made it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think is good to put that out there, because I think in the quest for entrepreneurial success, people think about it in terms of numbers. Maybe some equate it to that time freedom, but it's usually a bit deeper than that, right? It's still being able to work on some of those bigger pieces that are plaguing people outside of chasing the dollar, if you will.
Yeah.
It's going, there's just more at play here, guys.
Yeah. No one's trading their health for money if given the choice, right? Generally speaking. And no one's trading their time for money if they're 50 and they could buy back being 30. So obviously time and health are more important than money, because as time and health gets worse, you would use almost infinite money to get them back. And it's really not the reverse. People wouldn't do the reverse. So to me, that's where you have to focus on, that's the level of wealth that you have too.
Absolutely. I'm big on trying to bring people back to that in these conversations in the podcast. And most people I come on they're good on that. They realize that. But we know the online space is full of entrepreneurial hoopla where it's celebrating other things. And it's just nice to have somebody come on who hit all the marks effectively and goes, actually, kind of steer your life direction into these things and remember these values. It's cool. I guess on that note, kind of wrapping up here, do you have a dream for the future? Or is that kind of ambiguous at this point?
I know there's things that I want the company to achieve. I would love to, purchase a nursery here in San Diego, and that would be our home office, and we can do courses and classes and live. And so kind of
cool.
Bridging online to offline, I think would be huge. I think there's a long-term play there where maybe you have multiple nurseries around the country and you have a team that's running those, and you get this beautiful on-offline synergy of like, hey, buy now, pick up in store, or at the store, we'll ship it to your door. There's sort of interesting play there where you're really getting into like next level brick and mortar e-com sort of interactions. There's stuff like that. And I think just generally in normal life, like get healthier, work on being grateful, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. Your idea is super cool. I'm just sitting there going like, oh my gosh, go ahead and start that because I I want to come by for a course. I guess I'd have to come back to the States first, but
yeah,
I'm excited to see what you get up to. It's been really cool, Kevin, having you on, hearing your whole journey, an excellent interviewee. So really thank you for sharing all this and just kind of being an open book for us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I love doing these types of chats. I don't get to talk about business as much as I do gardening.
Cool. Well, next time, maybe we'll finally circle back on gardening, like I'd mentioned to you off air. But so tradition of the show, we usually close it out with a couple rapid fire questions. If you're cool with that, I can kick the first one off.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So what are the best hidden growth opportunities within building websites?
I would say that play I made where I bought that website and 301 it over was a great play. I guess if you generalize that advice, you might say if you're bad at building but better at improving, just buying a website at least off to the right foot and improving it from there might be, literally could save you a year or more, especially if you've never built a website before. That said, there is some improvement to there's something to be said about building something from scratch. So I do think acquiring stuff does speed things up, provided you actually know what to do with what you acquired.
Absolutely. 100%. I'm so glad that you're talking about a case scenario where that's worked out for you. And what about tools or resources that people can use to, say, optimize their sites?
Oh, man. I've become good friends with Gail and Mark over at Authority Hacker. I really like what they've done. I was actually I think maybe the first user of that course way back in the day. So guys like them, there's some other guys in the SEO world, like Brian Dean of Backlinko. I think I learned a lot from him back in the day. But these days, I'm a little unplugged from optimizing the site. We actually just hired an SEO guy to help us, which is weird because that's the background I totally came from. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it anymore. So sometimes maybe hiring. I don't know. I'm not great on that one. Sorry.
I think that's excellent advice. You said early in the podcast why that matters. So I actually do think that is a tool. People use your tools, use those resources. Final question here. What has been your funniest moment while building out Epic Gardening?
Oh, man. There's been so many weird sort of kooky moments, I guess, because, when you hit a global wave of interest like gardening, right? A lot of people started to connect with us on YouTube. At the time, it was just me on the channel. So connected with me on YouTube. And there's this sort of parasocial relationship that develops. So people think that they know you as a person when you're creating content. And so, just really sort of bizarre, kooky messages sometimes very sweet messages. I was growing and trying to live off my garden in 2019. And I grew a lot of potatoes. So I call myself the potato daddy. And someone in our Discord server actually made a pillow of me edited as a potato and all these different types of potato versions of myself, potato legs and arms with my face, all sorts of things. And then the pillow said world's greatest potato daddy. And they just delivered it to my house. And I was like, what the hell is this thing? And it was it wasn't cute. It was frightening, it didn't look normal. I don't know if anyone is ever going to get this reference, but I think it was the 90s or early 2000s, there was this Quiznos subs advertisement on TV that had these little paper cutout looking weird sewer rat things. And that's what I looked like on this pillow. Just this total nonsensical thing. And I was like, wow, would I have ever thought I'd get a weird pillow of myself as a potato daddy after starting Epic Gardening? Definitely not. So just weird stuff like that.
I love that it was part frightening. It's you want to be flattered and frightening is just a weird mix. It's a strange place to be sitting in.
It did last for like a week, and then I actually had to throw it away. I couldn't look at it anymore. It's so scary.
I can't.
Yeah, it was too much.
Yeah, great for stories, but you don't want to be haunted every time you walk through the room. It's like,
Totally.
the potato daddy.
Exactly.
Well, that's cool. Well, Kevin, seriously, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a fun conversation, learning all about what you've done with Epic Gardening, your mindsets, crazy pillows that have ensued. I'm really looking forward to getting this one out to our audience. So thanks again.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And if anybody wants to kind of find you, see where you are hanging out online, where should they reach you?
Yeah, I mean, any platform that you like to consume content on, that's where we are. Epic Gardening, just look that up. Podcast, YouTube, whatever. If you like more of like that homesteading stuff, like Greg loves, we do have Epic Homesteading, which is a secondary YouTube channel and Instagram account that kind of cover more of like energy systems, water supply, like kind of more of the nuts and bolts of growing your own food and producing for yourself.
Awesome. Well, okay, now I know what I'm going to get up to later today. I know what I'll be checking out. So thank you so much, Kevin. I hope you have a great rest of your day in San Diego.
You too, Sarah.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I hope you've walked away with a bit of new insight that'll help you in your digital entrepreneurship journey. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating review. To learn more about businesses available for sale at Empire Flippers, click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.